All right, thank you guys for indulging us. The theme today, core drivers of a world-class organization. All right, we also have another tradition, and we total up the numbers of collective dental experience in the room at all of our summits. This year, we have a total of 5,967 years of collective dental experience. Now we have between 670 and 700 people in the room right now. So that works out to about 9 years of collective dental experience. But I will say that not all experience is created equal. All right. I was recently at a large regional meeting. Okay. And, I vowed about 10 years ago that I would never go back to one of these types of meetings because they're not my people. It is a representation of the vast majority of dentistry. The outlook, the attitude, the energy, their feelings about the profession that they selected, typically all negative. 5,000 people at this particular meeting, maybe hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of collective dental knowledge in this meeting all at one time. But I will tell you that there was no collaboration, no attempt at creating a positive culture, nothing to be said about the struggles of business ownership and the difficulty that clinicians have when also trying to run a business. Not the type of people that I want to be around. I honestly believe this. I honestly believe that that is contagious. That negativity and that mindset is absolutely contagious. I just avoid it. But this particular case, we had at least a dozen of our masterminders that lived in this area. We decided that we were going to hang out and spend some quality time together, grab a meal, have some happy hour. So I decided to go. And for that reason, it was amazing. But I'll tell you that particular energy is not what I'm looking for. But then you take a much smaller meeting like this, 700 people, with the mindset, the philosophies, the abundance thinking that the people in this room have, the willingness to share. I would put this group of 700 up against that group of 5,000 any given day, as far as what we could possibly accomplish is to start taking on some of the issues and challenges that we face in dentistry. And there are no shortage of issues and challenges in dentistry. I talked at length about it last year, right here on stage, about some of the issues that we have, some of the issues that are still plaguing us as a profession. We need some serious dental education reform. We need to reform what's happening with the dental insurance industry. We need to do something about the adversarial relationship between hygiene and dental practice owners. We have any number of issues that we need to work through. But I'm talking to you guys about this because you, with this mindset, in this type of environment, with the people that surround you, are the people that can do something to move the needle and actually make change in a profession like this. I wouldn't expect a group of 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 of the last meeting that I went to be able to solve any problems in dentistry. But I'd go to battle with you guys because you get it and you understand that unless we collaborate, nothing is going to happen in dentistry or in our country or in the world. So your level of success is directly related to the value that you bring to your community, your sphere of influence in the marketplace. There's two cool quotes here that I highlight, and I've said them a million times on the podcast and probably on stages, maybe even in front of you guys. The first one's by Jim Rohn. We get paid by bringing value to the marketplace. We get paid by bringing value to the marketplace. The second one is by Zig Ziglar. You can get everything in life you want if you will just help enough people get what they want. Simple concepts. but super powerful when you think about the number of people in your life that you can actually personally reflect upon that think this way. Very few. Very few. But when you find an abundance-minded person, somebody that understands that their success is directly related to the amount of success of the people that surround them and how they can influence them by helping to raise them up, hold on to them. Surround yourself with people like that. I alluded to this earlier, but that is the primary reason that I've gotten anywhere in this profession and in my personal life is by surrounding myself with better people than me. So the amount of value that you bring depends on 4 primary factors, I believe. First, your mindset. Second is your prioritized focus, what you choose to focus on a daily basis from moment to moment. Your grit, which I think is very, very important. We're going to go over this at length today. And your talent. Intentionally last on the list. Because I truly believe that you can overcome your lack of talent in any area with the previous 3. Mindset, prioritized focus, and grit. So factor number 1, mindset, scarcity versus abundance. Fixed versus growth mindset, personal accountability versus victimhood. So let's start with scarcity versus abundance. So a scarcity-minded person would potentially think there are limited resources and opportunities available. An abundance-minded person would think there are unlimited resources and opportunities. Where did we come up with this type of attitude as far as a scarcity-minded attitude in dentistry? It doesn't take that long to look back and think, oh, this comes from undergrad. This comes from dental school. This might go all the way back to high school or primary school, where there are a finite number of seats for this coveted prize of acceptance into this undergrad program, acceptance into dental school, acceptance into the residency of our choice. And it's very difficult to automatically flip a switch and say, yep, now I'm abundance-minded. There were 3 people that were going to get accepted to residency programs in my entire class of 100. And they were clawing and scratching for every point, every A, at the expense of, potentially, their other classmates, not sharing exams, not sharing notes, not joining study groups. And then all of a sudden we get out into the real world and we're expected to, yes, I want to share everything with you, colleague. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's a difficult switch to flip. I understand that. A scarcity-minded person might think, I've worked hard to get this knowledge, resource, skill set, etc. Why should I share? You guys remember the gunners in dental school when you found out that they had a test? A group of 3 or 4 people that had a test and they just memorized the answers to the test and you spent 4 hours, you got a C, they got an A. You remember those people. And there's real life versions of that, of course. While an abundance-minded person would think, I'm excited about opportunities to collaborate and share best practices. A scarcity-minded person might think, I succeed at the expense of others, while an abundance-minded person might think, my success is proportionate to the number of people I help to succeed. Scarcity-minded? Admitting fault or taking responsibility is a sign of weakness, and it should be avoided at all costs. Abundance-minded person? I take full responsibility for everything that happens in my personal and professional life. There's a reason that we selected Jocko Willink to be our keynote speaker this weekend. His teachings of extreme ownership, personal accountability are probably one of the thickest threads that hold our mastermind together. Maybe one of the number 1 core tenets of philosophies that we believe in and preach. When we are at an elite practice mastermind meeting. We have 3 of those per year, one on the left coast, one on the right coast, one in the middle. And we get together as a group. When we break up into small groups of 10 or 11 with a black belt coach, you can tell immediately the philosophies that we hold as an organization. When somebody has a tendency to go down, it was the office manager's fault. Go down the road of, I would be more profitable if it wasn't for Delta Dental. Or, my tax rate is ridiculous in comparison to XYZ. It's very, very clear and easy to be able to just say, we don't play that here. Everything that happens to you in your personal life and your professional life is 100% your fault, for better or for worse. It's not your office manager's fault. It's not your team's fault. It's not Delta Dental's fault. And it's not the current administration's fault. It's your fault, for better or for worse. The good news is, on the other side of that, when you have a victory and figure out how to contend with the rules of the game and learn how to thrive in the rules, within the rules of the game, that's your victory. And the people that helped you to get there, nobody else. Mindset by Carol Dweck. Great book. If you guys haven't read it, one of my favorites. One of my top 10. She believes that there's 2 primary types of mindsets in the world, a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Fixed mindset, these are people with a mindset that believe that talent and intelligence is fixed and cannot be grown or developed. These people are so concerned about looking smart that they avoid challenging tasks and learning opportunities. They believe that they are stuck with their station in life. I tell the story often about this young man that I was mentoring. He was a pre-dental student. He was the brother of my dental anesthesiologist at the time. Super brilliant kid. 4.0. Got very good grades on his, very high scores on his DAT. Wanted to go to dental school. Had one school in choice in mind for dental school. Applied to one school. And I thought that was risky, but hey man, he had a nearly perfect transcript. And lo and behold, that first year, he did not get into dental school. Did not get into dental school. He got denied by the single school that he applied to. The next year, he did more volunteer work. He started a master's. Applied again. Nearly perfect transcript. Everything was great. Applied to that same school again and got rejected. That young man went on to not go into dentistry because he had a fixed mindset. He believed that that particular school did not select him because he was not cut out to be a dentist. That is a fixed mindset. I'm sure he went on to do something great, but it wasn't in dentistry. Now, growth mindset, on the other hand, these are people with a mindset that believe that intelligence and talent can be developed. These people don't get hung up on terms like I'm smart or I'm dumb. They focus more on developing their abilities. They're eager to take on challenges and are more resilient in the face of setbacks. They're very, very interested in figuring out how they can improve their lot in life with hard work and more knowledge and personal development and practice. These are growth mindseted people. Now, there are 2 different ways that you can move towards or away from a particular mindset. And one of the primary ways is praise. So ability praise, this type of praise focuses on characteristics such as talent and ability and leads to a fixed mindset. These people buy into the idea that no matter what you do, good or bad, you can't do anything to change. For instance, you're so smart. You're so beautiful. You're so naturally talented. Okay? When you praise people in that way, it actually leads towards a fixed mindset. That it's your natural, God-given ability or physical gifts that actually make you special. Process praise, on the other hand, this type of praise focuses on strategy, effort, and perseverance and leads to a growth mindset. So this increases engagement and problem solving becomes more effective as problems get harder. If you praise somebody by saying, that was a great effort, really, really good try. You worked really hard on that. I'm so impressed with your tenacity and perseverance. That type of praise will lead to a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So those of you that have kids, or those of you that are leaders within a team, make sure that you're focusing on things that are controllable, not that are natural gifts or innate abilities. When you're praising somebody and encouraging behavior, it's not based on the gifts that they were given, but the gifts that they are actually creating for themselves. Okay? Personal accountability versus victimhood. I don't often get starstruck, but I am extremely, extremely excited to interview this dude and to have him in our presence. There's been several Jocko sightings. I got a text from one of our black belt coaches that Jocko was actually on his flight from Washington, D.C. last night. And I said, dude, you better go talk to him. And he did. He got up and talked to him. And just like I have experienced, Jocko is a very, very humble and friendly and approachable person, regardless of the way that he looks at you. I'm very, very excited. One of the things that I love about his message is it's applicable to every single person that's sitting in this room, right? Not every single person in this room cares about their EBITDA percentage. Not every single person in this room cares about their culture score within their dental practice potentially. Not every single person in this room really cares about the number of new patients that flow through a particular practice if you're not a practice owner. But every single person can learn from his teachings that every single thing that happens in your life is your fault. Your level of education, your personal income, your percentage body fat. All of that is your fault. All of that is your fault. All of that is a choice. I mean, I would choose to be 6'2", and that wasn't my choice, that I'm only 5'9". But the things that are controllable within your control, really, really, it's your choice. So this quote by Jocko, once people stop making excuses, stop blaming others, and take ownership of everything in their lives, they are compelled to take action to solve their problems. We're going to be talking a lot more about victimhood versus personal accountability. It is, once again, one of the main core tenets of our DSI mastermind ethos. Factor 2, prioritized focus. Everybody knows this guy, Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI. Sam says, focus is a force multiplier on work. Almost everyone I've ever met would be well served by spending more time thinking about what to focus on. It is much more important to work on the right thing than it is to work for many hours. Most people waste their time on stuff that doesn't matter. Once you have figured out what to do, become unstoppable about getting your small handful of priorities accomplished quickly. I have yet to meet a slow-moving person who is very successful. We all have seen it online and in memes and in our reels and on social media. The hustle culture is real. And I have to say that for a long period of time, I bought into the hustle culture. Work your face off. Work 20 hours a day. And there are seasons that we will go through as business owners when we have to contend with the fact that, yeah, it's going to be a hard, long stretch. But here exactly is my goal at the end. And here exactly is the reason why, for this limited period of time, I'm willing to work this hard. But it's important to make sure that you are a good steward of your number one most valuable and finite resource, and that is time. The fact that you're working 20 hours a day when you could have offloaded 8 hours of that, delegated, eliminated, outsourced, potentially. That's just laziness. Believe it or not, in most cases, somebody that's working 20 hours a day, 100 hours a week, is lazy. I know it sounds counterintuitive, paradoxical. A lot of times, the more hours you work, the lazier you are. Because what happens during finals in undergrad or dental school? When is your apartment the cleanest? When is the lawn always mowed? It's when you have brain work to do. Because physical activity and hard work is always easier than sitting down to figure out the hard stuff. CEO work is exhausting for me in comparison to clinical work. Clinical work to me is mindless. I get into a zone, even if I'm cutting class 2s. I look up and the day is over. I produce $7,000, $10,000, $12,000. I feel good, but it is rote and it is easy for you guys. The tiny minutia is easy. The hard stuff is to back off and say, all right, I got to figure out this framework, or I have to figure out how I'm going to motivate my team without decreasing morale, or I have to figure out how I'm going to improve my culture or my leadership ability. That's the hard stuff. That doesn't require 20 hours a day. In fact, I'm going to tell you that after 4 or 5 hours, I'm done with the deep work stuff. And I just move on to something else that I enjoy doing, or get in a good workout, or go outside. Busyness, in most cases, is laziness. Of all ridiculous things, the most ridiculous seems to me to be busy. To be a man who is brisk about his food and work. What, I wonder, do these busy folks get done? Soren Kierkegaard. Same thing. Hustling is good to a certain degree, but you have to be a good steward of your most valuable resource. You guys have probably seen or heard our battle cry, get shit done, GSD. We have hats that say it. We have mugs that say it. We have t-shirts that say it. Get shit done. That's what we do in the mastermind group. But as the years have gone by, we've altered it slightly, even though GSD is still the battle cry because it's easier to say. And there's a lot of implications in there that we're going to get the right shit done. So this is what the new t-shirts say, although if you're nice to me, I might be able to get you one of the old ones that say GSD on it. Get the right shit done. That means eliminate all of the things, get them off your plate, outsource, eliminate, delegate as much as you can, and work on what's really, really important. This is an interesting little bit here. The 10 wealthiest people in the world own more wealth than the combined wealth of the bottom 3.1 billion people. Interesting. 10 people versus 3.1 billion people. Think about that. The combined hours available to these top 10 people is 87,600. In your slide, it's wrong. I missed it by a 0. 87,600 hours are available to these top 10 people in a year's period of time. Okay? The combined hours available to the lowest 3.1 billion people is 2.17 times 10 to the 13th. That's a lot of zeros. That's a lot of time. So 87,600 hours versus 2.17 times 10 to the 13th. Yet the 87,000 wins. In what ways are these 10 people allocating their most valuable resource differently than most? Do you think they're trading dollars for hours? Do you think they're doing deep work and really solving big problems? You're going to get paid for the level of complexity of the problem that you solve. These people are solving big problems, but additionally, they're allocating their most valuable resource correctly. I'll tell you that none of those top 10 people are doing anything throughout their day that they can't outsource for less than $10,000 an hour, probably. That's deep work. That's intentional. So we're going to get really granular and focused about this weekend right now. Okay? So why are you here? There's a reason why you guys are here. Just in general, Ashley alluded to it. You guys are looking for something. You wouldn't have sacrificed 48 hours of your life. You wouldn't have traveled from across the country, left your families, left your practices, skipped whatever it is that you had to skip in order to be here, unless you had a particular reason for being here. I want you guys to be super crystal clear about the top 3 reasons that you're here. And if you accomplish those 3 things, this weekend would have been a smashing success. For instance, I need to meet my future partner or associate. I need to figure out how to structure my meetings so that they actually mean something. I need to develop my leadership acumen. I need to build a stronger culture within my dental practice because my turnover is ridiculous. I need to increase my personal take-home income by 2-fold. I need to decrease my overhead because I'm working too hard for the amount of profit that my practice is generating. What are the top 3 things that if you accomplish this weekend or met this person would be a game changer and a trajectory changer? We'll give you guys 90 seconds to answer these questions. Be intentional about this. All right, go ahead and look up here when you guys are done. I love when the house lights are up. You guys look great. All right, moving on. You guys got it? Your 3 primary intentions. Okay, let's look at this. The value of an hour. Let's say that your desired take-home income is $1 million per year. Not production, but what you actually take home after all expenses are paid, after everybody on your team is paid. Say your desired take-home income is $1 million. This was my goal that I set when I was 15 years old before I even knew that I was going to become a dentist. I gave myself 20 years to accomplish it. I hit it on my 35th, just after my 35th birthday. But what is it, or how much is an hour of your time worth if you were to reach this pinnacle of $1 million per year? I know that there's a lot of people in this room right now that have already far exceeded this. All of the black belt coaches are well beyond this point. Most of our black belts are well beyond this point. But let's just say you're trying to get to this coveted $1 million a year desired take-home income. Let's say you work, there are 52 weeks in a year. Let's say you take 3 weeks of vacation off. I would hope that if you were making that kind of money, you would have more than 3 weeks off to be able to enjoy said income. But let's just say, for the sake of this example, that you take 3 weeks off a year. That's 49 net work weeks. And let's say that you work 40 hours per week. Hopefully, not all of that is clinical time because you wouldn't have time for deep work and CEO time and strategizing. But let's just say in a combination of CEO time and clinical work, if you're still doing clinical work, is 40 hours a week. That's 1,960 total hours per year that you're actually working. Some of that is potentially with your foot on the rheostat, spinning that handpiece, and hopefully a good percentage of that 1,960 hours is deep work CEO time. That means the value of one of your hours is $510. That would mean that you should be outsourcing, eliminating, or delegating everything else in your life that is less than $510 per hour. Okay? So the time journal exercise is something that we have all of our mastermind members do. And this is particularly important when you find yourself getting sucked into that I'm working 10, 12, 15-hour day pattern. What are you doing that we can eliminate? Are you doing only high-value activities? And what is that line where we would consider this a high-value activity and this a low-value activity? And in some cases, low-value activities are all right. I actually like doing the dishes. I like folding laundry. I find it actually a little bit relaxing. I like doing some stuff around the yard from time to time. The girls always laugh at me because when I'm supposed to be like writing a podcast episode or content, they'll find me out front with a leaf blower. I enjoy doing that shit. I just like it. It's cathartic. But if you were to try to determine what is actually a high value activity versus a low value activity, this is a great exercise for that. Most of the masterminders have done this already. All you do simply is write down from the time that you wake up in the morning until the time that you close your eyes at night, everything that you did in 15 to 30 minute increments. It's extremely tedious, and we have you do that for 7 days because we want to include the weekends. And once that's done, you only need to do it once, but once that's done, you're going to take 2 highlighters, a yellow highlighter and a blue highlighter. And with that yellow highlighter, we're going to highlight anything that you could have outsourced or delegated for less than $510 an hour or $250 an hour or $100 an hour or $50 an hour, depending on what your number is. You highlight that in yellow. If you could delegate, outsource, or eliminate. You highlight in blue everything that you can't delegate out for that much. Blue is your high value activities. Yellow is your low value activities. Your goal is to remove as much yellow as possible from your life. Simple as that. And use that value of an hour of your time as the threshold. Okay. So I want you guys to look for a second at these 2 different types of schedules. We have a technician, manager, CEO, creator. So you guys know that our lives when we're clinicians look a lot like the schedule on the left with an extra 3 columns for hygiene checks. That's what our life looks like as a technician. Okay? On the right is what your schedule looks like as a CEO or creator. Now, when we're talking about high value activities versus low value activities, in the beginning, it's very difficult for people like dentists who work at the clip that we work to switch from the left side to the right side. Very, very difficult. I remember when I decided that I was going to start working 6 hours a week on the practice and not in the practice. As a high-level CEO, leader of my practice, I was going to set aside 6 hours. And it was right in the middle of the week. It was half a day on Wednesday. And I would lock myself in my office, mistake number 1, while the rest of the practice was still churning. And by God, if I didn't get a door knock every 5 minutes during that 6 hours about a fire that they couldn't figure out how to put out without me. So mistake number 1, get out of the office. But you open your laptop and you just see this blinking cursor like, okay, I'm leading. This is what leadership feels like. I'm creating. Now what? So one of the best people that I know that is able to solve this riddle is Dr. Summer Casmel. She'll be talking a little bit about how to be an effective CEO and what to do during CEO time. But I'm here to tell you that it is not easy for a technician to roll into the creator and CEO world. And that uneasiness that you feel that you're not being productive and your tendency to want to fill that 6 hours back with busy work is completely natural. You have to fight that urge. Sometimes it takes a couple months before you catch your stride and you finally figure out what it is to do during these CEO and creator blocks. And that's okay. That's okay. I don't know if you guys are like me, but when I am in clinical mode, when I am in dentist mode, when I am in hustle mode, and I'm at home, I'm listening to a podcast, I'm washing the dishes, I'm feeding the dog, I'm talking to, or texting somebody about something that's happening with a patient. You always have to have 6 things going at one time, and then you feel normal. That's what we've trained ourselves to be as busy clinicians with 3 or 4 columns every single day. You have to fight that urge, sit down, have a strategy, have an end goal in mind for a project. And I'm going to show you guys later exactly how to get through those projects in a structured manner. Okay, I love this. This is all about focus and clarity. The Asana Pyramid of Clarity. Okay, I actually use this for my larger projects. So you guys have probably heard of the book, 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's one of the sexy 6. It's right under Jocko for books that are mandatory reading for Mastermind members. So if you're looking at this Asana Pyramid of Clarity, I left you guys a blank one on purpose because I want you to be able to work through this at home and to be able to copy. Okay, millennials, a copy is when you take something that is on a piece of paper and you put it face down on this machine that's called a copier. You push this button and it's like magic. This other piece of paper that looks like the paper that you were trying to copy comes out. And you can utilize this piece of paper to do this exercise over and over again, okay? So the Asana Pyramid of Clarity. So what we're looking at here is a top-down approach. So if you're looking at the top of this pyramid here, according to Sean Covey and the 4 Disciplines of Execution, you would put what we call the WIG here. That's your wildly important goals. So that could be something big, something that you want to accomplish over several years. It could be 5 years, 3 years, 1 year, but it is your primary objective. You can have 1, 2, or 3 primary objectives, okay? You don't want to have 25 primary objectives because you'll get a little bit done in each of them and actually get nothing accomplished. So 1, 2, or 3 primary objectives. Maybe a primary objective for your particular practice is that in a 3-year period of time, you want to go from $500,000 in gross revenue to $5 million in gross revenue. I know that sounds crazy. We see it happen all the time. So maybe that would be your WIG. Okay? I'm not saying that that's important to anybody out there, but let's just use this as an example. So your WIG is $5 million, so $4.5 million in gross revenue increase in the next 36 months. That would be your WIG. Okay? Below that would be a 1-year goal. So the 1-year goal in this particular example would be $1.5 million a year in increased revenue year over year every 12 months. Okay, so that would be the 1-year goal. Your 1-year goal would be $1.5 million in increased revenue. Below that would be the 4 things that would need to happen in order for you to accomplish this 1-year goal. So in this case, potentially you would need to increase your systemization or your infrastructure. Maybe there are a certain number of people that you would need to assemble. Maybe that would include 2 more hygienists and an associate doctor and a new office manager. Maybe a director of operations. Okay. Maybe you need to beef up your personal board of directors. Maybe you need a new attorney and a new accountant, whatever it is. What people do you need to assemble in order to accomplish this 1-year goal? What does the money look like? Do you need to invest any money into this infrastructure? Likely you would. You're going to need to pay that associate dentist. You're going to need to pay that office manager. What exactly does that look like? Don't make it fuzzy. Be very specific about what investment is going to be needed in order to accomplish this 1-year goal. And then potentially you might need to increase your clinical offerings. Maybe you need to increase your clinical suite or your clinical skill set in a certain number of specialty type areas. Okay. Now we're going to talk later about doing that prematurely. If you're at 120% overhead right now, there's no money in the bank and you're living off credit cards to pay for your payroll. It's not time to go take a $25,000 implant course. First, we got to plug the holes in the bucket, fix the infrastructure, and in phase 3, you'll be ready to increase your clinical offering. But for the sake of this example, potentially you're going to need to increase your clinical offerings to hit that 1-year goal. And then if you go below that, you're looking at 12 different months. So in month 1, January, here's what needs to happen. Where are we? We're in month 4. Okay. In month 4, April, what needs to happen? Maybe in April, we're focusing mostly on infrastructure. So we're working on our operations manual in month 4, and we're going to completely finish the operations manual and the onboarding process for new hires. And that's what we're going to try to accomplish in April. Next, in May, maybe we're going to focus on people. Maybe we're going to seek and put an ad out for that office manager and the associate dentist. And of course, you guys can see that you don't have to take 1 month and pick one of those 4 initiatives. You can spread it out, but this gives you a little bit of clarity of what needs to happen along the way in bite-sized chunks. I love the Asana pyramid of clarity. All right, factor number 3 and 4, grit and talent. Another incredible book. If you guys haven't read it yet, it's worth a read for sure. Angela Duckworth and her book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. She talks about naturals versus strivers. We talked about this already. Naturally gifted people versus people that got there from grit, perseverance, and hard work. And most world-class people have a little bit of both, right? So Michael Phelps had natural ability as a swimmer. He had the perfect physique and anatomy as a swimmer. Short legs, long torso, long wingspan, perfectly gifted for world-class swimming times. In addition to that, he had legendary work ethic. So he became the best in the world. I contend that even if you have very few natural gifts, as far as intelligence, natural ability, you can overcome that with a fair amount of really hard, focused, intentional work. So the variables leading to achievement, according to Duckworth: talent is how quickly your skills improve when you invest effort. Skill is the ability to do something well. And effort is the amount of work put towards a task or a project. Achievement is the utilization of acquired skills. So the math looks like this. You multiply talent by effort, and you get skill. So if you have very little talent, you need to increase that variable of effort. If you have a ton of talent, potentially you could decrease the amount of effort that you put into something before you obtain the skill. All right, in order to achieve something, you need that skill times effort. The amount of skill you have times the amount of effort that you put forth is going to equal the achievement of that goal, which means that effort counts twice. Effort is the most important variable in this equation. Talent, skill, and effort equal achievement, but talent counts twice. I'm sorry, skill counts twice. Skill counts twice. Effort counts twice. Effort counts twice. Like I said, I know this stuff like the back of my hand. Skill counts twice. You guys know what I mean? Thank you. I was testing you. I was just checking to see if you were paying attention. Skill counts twice. Like I said. All right. Compared to what we ought to be, we are only half awake. Our fires are damped. Our drafts are checked. We are making use of only a small amount of our possible mental and physical resources. There's a gap between potential and its actualization. The human individual lives usually far within his limits. He possesses power of various sorts, which he habitually fails to use. He energizes below his maximum, and he behaves below his optimum. We talk about this a lot in the group, the difference between a hero and an anti-hero. That's towards motivation versus away motivation. So a lot of us build up in our heads this ideal character, or maybe it's an online influencer, or it's a movie star, or it's a professional athlete. And you look at them and you say, I want to be just like this person. I want the character, the looks, the physical prowess. I want the abs to look just like this particular person. That's hero worship, and that's towards motivation. There's another way that you can go and you can say, all right, I see this guy over here who smokes a pack a day, who kicks his dog when he gets home, who's not a very nice person to be around. He's just generally a slob. Every time I see him, he's got Cheeto dust on the front of his belly. That could potentially be anti-hero or away motivation. You have to determine what it is that actually motivates you. For me, I'm looking at a version of myself in the past who wasn't optimized in any way. Maybe I was lazy at the time, slightly overweight. Maybe I was drinking too much or eating fast food. Maybe I didn't take the time to work on personal development. There was a period in my life when I was this person. That to me is my anti-hero. My hero is somebody that is 5 years from now in better shape than I am, more wise than I am, more evolved than I am. To me, that is how I reach my full potential. When I'm comparing myself to less than optimal Mark and striving for Mark that doesn't exist yet, but eventually will. You guys can have your own method, but there is some way in order to motivate yourself towards something. And I will tell you, I've met a fair amount of quote unquote famous people. I've met a fair amount of extremely successful authors and professional athletes and Olympians. And I'll tell you guys, they have all the same insecurities that we all do. They have all the same character flaws that we do. They have the same negative self-talk that we all do, sometimes more. There's nothing to be idealizing as far as a single individual that you can't accomplish yourself. So all I'm saying is that if you're looking for the idealized human, make it yourself in a certain number of years or months where you are filling the gaps of what you think is not ideal about you as a human right now. All right, so we talk about some of the characteristics of black belt coaches and black belts in general in our organization. We're going to kind of do a deep dive of what these people are all about and why they are able to perform at such a high level from a personal and a professional standpoint. And one of the things that we talk about all the time that black belts have in common is they have some of the highest attendance at our mastermind meetings, which is counterintuitive, right? It's paradoxical that the people that are doing the best are going to the most trainings, even when it's mostly white and blue belts at a particular meeting. Why would a black belt coach or a black belt in general fly all the way across the country to hear content that they've probably already heard, some version of it, and to hang around people that have not yet achieved what they have personally or professionally? Why would they do that? Well, for one, because of our ethos, and they want to help people, elevate them to help them get to closer to their full potential because that's how they gauge success. But additionally, they're there because by nature, they know that if they hear one thing, if they pick up one idea from a white belt, a blue belt, or another co-black belt that's speaking on stage, that they know that they can take that single grain of sand, that nugget, apply it to their personal situation or professional situation, and it could change the trajectory of their whole career, even at that high level. It's interesting because we have people we have very low attrition, 7-8% attrition year over year, which is unheard of. It's 50 to 60% in most consultancies, but we have 7 to 8% attrition. It doesn't bother me as much as it used to, but we do exit interviews and we would be like, well, like, what is it that we could have done better in order to have kept you in the coaching group, in the mastermind? Because I see here that, you really never got to black belt level. You're still kind of been between white and blue for the last 3 years, and now you're dropping out. Well, Mark, thank you. I just love the group. I love everybody. Some of my best friends are in this group, but I just feel like I learned everything that I needed to learn. It's like, really? Did you? Because 25% of our group is actually black belts, and you've been hovering in the white to blue belt category for a good 3 years now. Have you learned everything? Maybe knowledge-wise, but have you taken advantage of all the resources at your fingertips in order to get to this coveted black belt level? How come your 4 futures are still sub 50%? Why are your personal relationships and your professional relationships still struggling? Why do you still have 28% body fat? Why do you still gasp for air when we're walking from here to your car? Have you learned everything and have you taken advantage of all the resources at your disposal in this group? Those are the questions that I ask them. But I will say, back to my point about these nuggets, black belt coaches, black belts in general in our organization. And when I say black belt, I don't just mean that they're $2 million producers and they're netting $1 million and their EBITDA is 25% or greater and their overhead is less than 50% excluding doctor compensation. Yeah, that's part of it. But these people also have 4 future scores that are greater than 80%, which means they're mastering all 4 quadrants, including the mindfulness quadrant, their ability to handle stress, their equanimity, how they handle stress with poise, their personal and professional relationships in the meaning quadrant, their personal vessel, their personal fitness in the muscle quadrant. And then, of course, they're maximizing that last quadrant, the money quadrant. Money is the Trojan horse for the dental success companies. A lot of people come in because there's not enough money in the bank account at the end of the month, and they're striving for greater personal take-home income. And there's nothing wrong with that. That will most definitely happen if you hang out with us for any length of time. But the unintended side effect is you can master all the rest of your 4 futures. All right, so front-loaded nuggets. If our black belts are flying across country and sacrificing their time and their 2 most valuable resources, their time and attention, like you guys are this weekend, to go hang out with their other fellow mastermind members 3 or 4 times a year for maybe 1 nugget that they could take away because they know they're implementers and it'll change everything, I thought maybe I'll just front load the nuggets and allow you guys 6 or 7 gems that if you just picked up one of these that I'm going to go over right now, it would make the entire weekend worthwhile. How does that sound? Yes? Okay. Calm down. Calm down. I got to carry on here. Hold on a second. I'm getting there. All right. So front-loaded nuggets. Number 1. The most important skill set to develop in order to build a world-class organization is leadership. And we overcomplicate leadership. All right. So if leadership is here and everything else is below it, we better figure out how to master leadership or at least move towards a more competent leader sooner than later. Or else we're never going to be more systemized. We're never going to improve the culture. And with that, we're never going to increase our revenue. We're never going to decrease our overhead. We're never going to increase our EBITDA or profitability. Leadership, above all, is the most important thing. We overcomplicate leadership, but it is the most important thing. Okay. So let's talk about the very, very basics of leadership. Without 15 slides on leadership, let's reduce it down to the basics. You do not need to be able to do this and stand up on stage in front of 700 people and hold the attention of an audience for 2 hours at a time in order to be a strong leader. Charisma is very, very important. To be able to change the energy in the room when you walk in is very important. To be magnetic to other people and to have them want to get to know you and to learn more about you, that's charisma, and that's very important. But it's not absolutely necessary as a leader. Charisma is related to leadership, but leadership does not mean that you have to be a charismatic individual. It helps, but it's not necessary. It's not absolutely necessary, okay? Leadership is about having very, very clear expectations for the people that work for you. Holding them accountable for those expectations. Being crystal clear about every single role in your organization and what success looks like for that particular role. Holding people accountable for your expectations. Being a good communicator. And being empathetic. That's it. That is leadership. And we're going to go over in depth for our Golden Rhino Award winner this year. One of the main things that we worked on him to develop was his leadership acumen. And once he developed his leadership acumen, he took off like a hockey stick in all aspects of his life. So if there's one thing that I would say, maybe the number one nugget for this entire experience this weekend, is that if you do not feel as though you are a strong leader, leadership acumen is the most important thing to develop if you're going to be a black belt level anything, personal or professional. That's nugget number one. Nugget number two. There are seasons to building a sustainable and successful organization. Okay. This to me is very, very important. I often have young dental students who I love to mentor and I love to communicate with. There are a number of them in the house right now. Dental students, raise your hands. You guys are all in the back. Hi. This is a lot like dental school. All the cool kids sit in the back. Thank you guys for being here. If I had this information when I was in your shoes, man, I could have saved myself probably millions of dollars and years of heartache and frustration. So I congratulate you for being here, and we welcome you into our profession. Don't let some of the things that I'm going to be talking about bum you out about dentistry. I love that you're so pure and innocent and you haven't seen it all yet. But I promise there's light at the end of the rainbow. I mixed two analogies, sorry. There's also gold or a pot of something at the end of the rainbow. Okay. There are seasons to building a sustainable and successful organization. So I often, talk to dental students, or I'll talk to baby docs that are 1 or 2 years out. They're like, Mark, I just want to be where you are. And this is when I had dental practices. I want 10 dental practices. I want 16 dental practices. I want to retire at 48. I want to work 6 hours a week clinically because I love it. And then I want to work the rest of the time as a CEO. And I want this in the next 24 months. Okay. I've never seen that happen before, but hey, let's put a plan together and see if we can make it happen. So let's break down exactly kind of what you're doing right now. How many days a week are you working? Well, I work at 3.5 days right now because I believe in work-life balance. And I'm working on my 4 futures. And I'm making about $117,000 a year take home. And I'm producing about $42,000 a month. Okay, awesome. Hey man, that's respectable. $117,000, that's great. That's 3 times the average salary of the typical American worker. You're doing great. All right. So I want you to know personally that if you want to get to where I am, there were certain seasons and certain sacrifices that I had to make. For the first 4 years, I was working 10 hours a day clinically in 4 different dental practices, 6 days a week. Are you willing to do that to kind of get there? I mean, you don't have to work maybe not that hard. Maybe your trajectory will be a little bit longer if you don't put in that kind of effort clinically. But are you willing to do that? Well, actually, no, I probably am going to have to pass on the way that you did it. But if you could help me find a different way of doing it, I would be all ears. I'd be all ears. Look, guys, there are seasons. There are seasons to your career trajectory. There are going to be times when you're going to have to hustle and you're going to have to work really hard. I just said earlier that we want to be good stewards of our time. And working 10 to 12 to 15 hours a day, maybe not the wisest thing and unsustainable, but there are going to be seasons when you're working extremely hard and you're going to have to try to do your best to balance that out. Okay? The work stuff and the life stuff. What I found to be really, really effective is something that I would have done more of, but it's to sit down with your significant other or your family in general and just say, hey, look, I have this project coming up, or we have this new practice that we're launching, or I have this initiative at work where I need to get this, operations manual done, and I'm onboarding 3 new associates and two hygienists. So for the next 6 months, guys, I just need a little bit of grace and just know that I'm going to be gone for 10 hours a day. In return, I commit to you as a family that I won't miss any of the soccer games. Even though I'm working hard, I'll still be able to make it to the soccer games. I'll come in and then I'll probably have to go out. I may be working after hours a little bit for this finite period of time, but I still commit to these things. Here are my non-negotiables. Here's the grace that I'm asking you to extend to me. And what I'm asking you is, I know a big sacrifice. I'm sacrificing as well, but it is for the greater good of our family and for our future. Can we do this together? Can I get your support here? What I see people doing is charging into an initiative or a brand new practice or a time or a season when it's going to be particularly busy, and they never tell anybody else in their immediate circle that this is going to be happening. And when their significant other or their family notices that they're gone an extra 5 hours a day, it is not received as though you are sacrificing for the family. It's received with resentment because you're gone again. And all you care about is work. And you're not doing this for me. You're doing this because you're selfish and narcissistic. If you have the advanced conversation that says, I commit to doing the following things. If you will give me a little bit of grace for this period of time, we'll check back in 3 months and then again in 6. You can call me out if my non-negotiables are not happening. And I could potentially call you out if you start to get resentful when you agreed to this. There will be seasons. Communication is everything. Number 3, we overcomplicate business. You guys know my story. My very first business was a catering truck. I drove a roach coach. While I was trying to get into dental school for that 3.5 years, I got accepted into the executive MBA program. I bought a catering truck franchise. And I would drive this truck around with my little cook Mercedes in the back. And she would make carne asada burritos and French fries and tacos for the construction workers. And I would pull up to a construction site and honk the horn and flip open the door. I had my little change dispenser, and we would be slinging carne asada burritos and cheeseburgers and Marlboro Lights and black coffee to construction workers. We'd stay for 7 minutes. We'd close up and we'd go to the next construction site. That was production at each stop. That was production. And I knew and I figured out that Mercedes' salary and everything that it took to stock this truck, including gas and the cost of the route and the cost of the person that it took to pack the ice on that route and the diet sodas and the coffee grounds and the Marlboro Lights, the cost of all of that had to be below what my production was every 7 minutes at these construction stops. Business 101. right? Revenue minus expenses equals profit. We overcomplicate business. Okay? A lot of people are driving the top line like crazy. We see this a lot. Drive that top line. Production, production, production. To the point where, hey man, I'm going to give you guys as a team 10% of everything over this threshold of production. I'm like, bro, how long ago did you institute that bonus program based on production alone? Are you aware that your overhead is 95%? So you're actually losing a percentage in overall profitability every time you actually hit your number. We overcomplicate business. It's not that hard. Produce a certain amount of money, keep your expenses in check, including your loan payments. That equals profit. Okay? You can't produce your way out of a broken business. Number 4, it is possible and necessary to track and incrementally improve subjective measures within your organization. Subjective measures, things that aren't easy to track and measure. What's easy to track and measure? Our lag measures, our production, our new patients, our collections, our overhead, our EBITDA. Easy to track. We're looking back 1 month. All the financial statements come in. We're tracking it. Easy. Objective. Easy. How about culture of your dental practice? How about leadership? Fuzzy. Difficult to track. It's possible. It's possible. If you have a reliable leadership assessment, which we have, and you're constantly looking back and comparing your current self to a self that you're trying to get to, or your current self with your previous self, you can gauge and track the amount of leadership acumen that you're actually gaining or losing in real time. And you can do the same thing with culture. We're gonna go over in-depth examples when we do the case study of the Golden Rhino Award winner later today and tomorrow. So it is possible to incrementally improve subjective measures and track subjective measures within your organization. Number 5, wealth accumulation should not be the sole measurement of success and will not alone lead to happiness and fulfillment. I'm not going to beat this horse to death, but you guys remember my story, I think, probably, if you've heard it. I had the very, very finite binary goal of becoming a millionaire by the time I was 35 years old. I set that goal when I was 15 years old. And when I wanted to be a millionaire, I meant $1 million in the bank, liquidity, and $1 million on, on my tax return. I wanted to actually be making $1 million. So $1 million in the bank, $1 million net income. The day that I realized that I had accomplished it, my CPA sent me my tax return, opened up my laptop, $1,030 or something that particular year. I had done it, shut my laptop, and realized, oh man, I've never been more miserable in my life. This does not feel like I thought it would feel. It was the only really main parameter I had ever given myself for whether or not I would be successful. Millionaire status equals success. The sad truth is, this was before the 4 futures, but if I was to assess myself in the 4 futures at the time, my mind quadrant was a 0 out of 10. I had no ability to handle stress. My negative self-talk was horrible. You wouldn't talk to your worst enemy the way that I talked to myself back then. Equanimity, didn't know the word existed. There was no poise during difficult times in my life. Nobody liked to be around me. In my personal life, my professional life, not a good place to be from the mindfulness quadrant. The meaning quadrant, I didn't have a primary purpose. I didn't have a reason for doing anything that I was doing other than to hit that 7-figure mark. My personal relationships were in the dumps. My professional relationships were terrible. I had no meaning to my life other than trying to get an extra comma and 0 in my bank account balance. My muscle quadrant, I was an ex-college athlete. I'd never been more out of shape than I was at that period of time in my life. Millionaire status, chubby, drinking too much, eating fast food every day, getting no sleep, 0 out of 10 in the muscle quadrant, 10 out of 10 in the financial quadrant. Does this make a successful person? I would say no. But that was the only goal I had ever set for myself. So beware and be careful. We're allowed to talk about money in here. We're not allowed to talk about money at the greater New York. We're not allowed to talk about money at Hinman. We're not allowed to talk about money in the Western Regional or the ADA. We're allowed to talk about money at the Dental Success Summit. I encourage it. Just beware and be careful. If that is your only parameter for success, you're in for a rude awakening, because you will get there if you push hard enough, and it could be a very, very empty and hollow victory if you don't pay attention to the rest of your 4 futures. Number 6, charisma, the art of conversation and the ability to build quick rapport and trust is perhaps the most underappreciated skill set for personal and professional success. All right. I just said that charisma is not necessary to be a strong leader. So am I contradicting myself? Maybe to a degree. I think that your ability to have a good conversation, your ability to connect with people quickly, your ability to build rapport could be the most valuable skill set that you ever build. Ever. Relationships are everything. I said that I have this unique ability to surround myself with people that have more talent, more intelligence, more gifts than I do, more natural gifts than I do. My ability to build rapport and build relationships has served me very, very well. I'm going to tell a very quick story. Masterminders have heard it. I was having dinner with Ryan Holiday, who's one of my favorite authors. If you buy enough books, you'll get invited to special dinners, etc. So I fly out to Austin, Texas. He has a little ranch in Bastrop, Texas. We toured his little bookstore in Bastrop. Really, really cool bookstore. Went across the street for dinner. A very, very chill place, family style. We're sitting at picnic tables. Some very successful people in the room. We had real estate developers, other New York Times bestselling authors. We had YouTube influencers who you guys would know who they were if you saw them. There was a young lady there who owned a very successful chain of gymnastics gyms. One of the most prolific neurologists in the country, which is weird. He is a multiple practice owner and a neurologist. He had 90 different neurologists working for him. Fascinating people. Great dinner. I'm sitting across the table from Ryan Holiday at dinner, and I had a very specific question that I wanted to ask him. And there's this tall dude that was sitting next to me to my left. And he and I had been chatting on and off all night. In fact, this tall guy was like in my hip pocket all night. He was constantly asking, he's like, "Oh yeah, so I hear you're a consultant. What exactly do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I have very specific clientele. The people that I consult with are dentists. And I'm a business consultant just for dentists." He's like, "God, that's fascinating. How do you do that?" And so this guy was asking me questions, talking my ear off to the point where I was like, okay, now I'm going to go meet some other people. I was doing the thing where I was trying to look over his shoulder, but he was like 6'9", so I was having a difficult time looking over his shoulder to see who else was important in the room. But I didn't take any time to figure out who this guy was. He was just talking to me, and his curiosity about who I was as a person was really, really interesting. So I didn't take the time to volley and ask him any questions about what he did or who he was. Trying really hard to get Ryan Holiday's attention because I was at this dinner, because I was a guest of Ryan Holiday. He's my favorite author, and I had a very, very important agenda. I really wanted to get this question asked to Ryan Holiday. Ryan, I heard you've talked to the NFL Owners Association, like a room of billionaires. You've talked to many different NFL teams, NBA teams, Major League Baseball teams. You've talked to the entire leadership in the U.S. Army and the Navy and the Air Force. How do you contend with the fact that when you get up there it's very difficult to capture the attention of very high achievers. Very specific, very easy question to answer. Tall guy next to me chimes in. I'm asking Ryan the question. Tall guy. Well, Mark, all you got to do is you got to treat them like regular people. And, you don't pedestalize people. You just treat them like regular people. Just because they're a professional athlete or a 5-star general, you just treat them like regular people. I'm like, yeah, dude. And Ryan, so what's your answer to this question? And this guy just keeps on chirping in my ear. Ryan eventually gave me a decent answer. So we're walking around later and having a couple glasses of wine and I'm talking to the tall guy again. He's asking me more questions about my business. And Ryan comes up and he goes, oh, I see you met RC. RC is the CEO of San Antonio Spurs. Ex-NBA legend. He was responsible for the trade of Dennis Rodman to the Bulls. It's like, RC, nice to meet you. I ignored the guy all night. And that was a really, really important lesson to me that I needed to volley and be more curious in conversation. He was extremely charismatic. He was extremely curious. He felt as though I had more to teach him than he had to teach me. He wasn't trying to push an agenda on me. And that was a huge, important learning experience. Even though I tried to teach charisma, trust, and rapport, this guy taught me a big lesson that night. Charisma and your ability to build trust and rapport is probably one of the most valuable skill sets that you could build for yourself. Learn how to make friends, guys. And number 7, nothing is more damaging to your personal or professional development than lack of personal accountability. We're going to talk a lot about that with our friend Jocko Willink here in a few minutes. Personal accountability, not the blame game, not victimhood. What are you responsible for? Everything in your own life. Okay, crushing this summit. This is our framework for all meetings that we ever have inside DSS, inside DSI, inside DSN. And this is the framework that we encourage our owner docs in the mastermind group to use for all of their meetings. Presence, intention, time, and agenda. Be present. Be present this weekend. Whatever's happening on your phone is likely less important than what the speakers have to offer this weekend. I know it's intoxicating. You want to see what's happening on socials. You want to check the news feed. Do your very best to be as present as you possibly can. And when you feel yourself being pulled to check it, just turn it over and challenge yourself to get through an entire lecture without looking at it. And don't pretend like you're taking notes on your phone. Use the old-fashioned thing, the pencil. Intention. We talked about your 3 primary intentions. Time. We're going to get you in here on time and out of here on time. Very, very cognizant of being respectful of your time. And agenda. We have a very strict agenda and something that I want you guys to make sure that you're doing whenever you're having your own meetings. Never have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. Make sure you're following this framework. Make sure everybody in your meetings is present. If you have to have a basket where everybody puts their cell phones in the beginning of a meeting, do so. Intention, you're having a meeting for the following reason. Here's the desired outcome for this meeting. Here's the amount of time that it's going to take. If it's a morning huddle, it's 15 minutes. If it's a weekly growth meeting, it's exactly 45 minutes. And then an agenda. Anytime you're getting together with people and having a formal meeting, you must have an agenda. Do not meet without an agenda. 100% of the time, it will devolve into a bitch fest if you do not have an agenda. The state of dentistry. There's 202,000 practicing dentists in the United States, 159,000 general dentists, 42,735 specialists. We have 7,370 dental grads every single year. We have 5,392 dentists leaving the profession each year, which means a net increase of dentists per year of 0.69%. So 1,339 new dentists enter the workforce every year net. So 0.69% increase in the dental population versus a 0.53 increase in the United States population. So we are more than keeping up with the population growth. We're exceeding the population growth of the United States. Okay? So that should tell you something. That should tell you that we got to sharpen things up a little bit. However, that it's worth noting that we have gone down in practice ownership from 85% of this 202,000 practicing dentists to 73% of this 202,000 practicing dentists in the last 5 years. There's any number of factors that we can attribute that to, and we'll go over more of those as we go on in the weekend. Just want you guys to be aware of this trend. Currently, there's 38% of the dental population practicing dentists that are female, and that makes 61% of male dentists in our profession currently. Interestingly enough, if you look at this, in 2023, first-year dental students, 50.5% were female versus 49.5% which were male. So as us old dudes leave the profession, it's going to be backfilled with more females. And there are some implications to that as well, positive and negative. Okay? The reason that there could be a potential mixed benefit to having more females in the population is that it's been proven that less females are dental practice owners. We got some stone cold killers in DSI that are females. A good number of our black belt coaches and black belts in general are badass female dental practice owners. But fewer female practitioners own dental practices than male practitioners. And this is not, I'm just talking numbers here. There are any number of reasons why that is happening, but primarily it's because it's more difficult to be a working mother than it is a working father, and particularly business owner when it comes to that. Dental Success Institute has proven that you can accomplish both and you can do both, but that's the reality of the situation as far as gender in dentistry. Age, 17% are less than 35 years old, 26% are 35 to 44, 22% are 45 to 54, 19% are 55 to 64, 16% are 65 years or greater. The average retirement age for dentists is 69 in comparison to the average age of retirement of the typical American, which is 63. Income, what everybody always wants to hear about. The typical solo practitioner, general practitioner is making $204,000. If you work in a group practice, $274,000. Interesting that if you work in a group practice as a general dentist, you're actually, on average, making more money than a solo guy or gal. If you're an employee dentist, you average $184,000 for associates. All owners, $228,000, and all GPs, $218,000 on average. Okay? Specialists. Solo specialist is making $320,000. A group specialist is making $443,000 on average. Employee dentist, $202,000. All owners, $368,000. All specialists average together $353,000. If you combined all dentists together, both specialty and GP, it looks like this. $229,000 for the solo, $315,000 for the group practitioner, $188,000 for the employee dentist, $259,000 for all mixed specialty and GP. All dentists combined, the big number now, $244,000 is the average income of typical dentist/dental specialist in the United States currently. Here's what it looks like as far as billing and collections. The typical or average, I would say, dental practice in the United States as a GP is collecting under $850,000. That's as a GP private practice. As a solo, they're making about, or they're producing about 1.15. As a group practice, GP, about 750,000. Specialists, just over $1 million. And all average together, GP collecting about 800,000. And a specialist is collecting about $1.2 million. Okay. I know it's hard for you guys to see this, but you guys are going to see a bunch of these reports. This is our scorecard inside of DSI. This is really interesting. Jake put this together. This is the DSI Mastermind Scorecard. So this is the 2023 Mastermind Scorecard. So our mastermind group in total, just over 200 people, $444 million as a group. Our total overhead, $242,000, which is 55% overhead. Now that includes the black belts and people that just joined. So all averaged together as a group, we average 55% overhead. Okay. That's pretty powerful. Associate salaries, $52 million. Owner income, $51 million. Mastermind stats. Here's what this looks like for the first 12 months if you join the mastermind group. 11% revenue increase with a decrease in 3% of overhead, which is a net positive of 14% profitability. That might not sound too sexy, but what you guys are going to find out is that everything happens after that 12-month mark, after we fix the infrastructure. We're not working on increasing revenue until we plug all the holes in the bucket. The first 12 months is infrastructure, systemization, leadership, and culture. 12 to 24 months, this is when we really start to see really cool growth. 27% revenue growth, a decrease in 8% in overhead, which is 35% profitability increase in months 12 to 24. So if you're looking from 0 to 24 months, you have an increased revenue of 38%, a decrease in 11% overhead, and an increase in 49% of total profitability. That is bonkers. Now, if you guys remember, the average doctor / dental specialist is making $244,000 per year. That's according to the ADA. The average doc take home in the mastermind group is $642,000, about $400,000 higher than the typical dentist / dental specialist in the United States, with a decrease in clinical days of 1.5 days over a 24-month period of time. I'm proud of our people.